Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Kuf Nun Tes Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Kuf Nun Tes Amid Aleph, Siman Shin Chav Hey, in the middle of Sif Yud. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanisunim Batzara Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem, V'Yitziam Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afela La'ira Mishibud L'Geula, Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema, for Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malkachana, Yitzchak Ben Siyam Edusha, Rivka Bashir Alea, Chavadasa Baserol. They should have a refuah Shalema B'Sar Shar Chole Yisrael. And we ask that in the schus of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every single member of Klal Yisrael, B'chol Makom Shehem. I'm recording this year on the second day of Rosh Chodesh, Chodesh Elul. So today is the first day of Elul. I could wish everybody a ksiva v'chasima tova. Everybody should be cognizant of the fact that we are now in the Yemei Elul. It's a time that we have to think about our maisim. We have to think about everything that we do. We have to be cognizant of the approaching Yom Hadin, Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. A lot of people think about El and the Yomim Noraim as being a frightening time. At the same time, we know that El stands for Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. It's a time where a person has the ability to come very close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. I always say that there's two ways that you can look at Unisana Toikif. There's the frightening way to look at Unisana Toikif. You read Unisana Toikif, and you see over there that V'chol Boi Olam Yavrun Lefanav Kivnei Marain. Every person passes by the Rebbeinu Shalom just as a farmer inspects his sheep, and he brings the sheep in one little shepsel at a time, and looks at that sheep, and then lets it go through, and then the next one he takes a look at. So the same thing we say in the Sanatoikif Chol Boi Olam Yavrun Lefanav Kivnei Marain. Every single one of us goes past the Rebbeinu Shalom Kivnei Marain. The Rebbeinu Shalom Kaviyachol, his full attention is on us. It sounds very frightening. The Rebbeinu Shalom, I have to go to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to be down me. He's going to judge me, and his full attention is going to be on me. I'm not getting lost in the crowd. His full attention is going to be on me. It's very frightening. And the truth is, yes, it is. And a person has to make sure that he does a reckoning of his maisim, his shmiras hamitzvahs, his limud HaTorah, anything that he has to work on. And yes, he should have a little bit, at least that yira that's going to inspire him to do tshuva. But at the same time, look what an unbelievable opportunity it is. How do people line up and they try to use all sorts of pull and all sorts of machinations to get into a gadol, to get into a rebbe? They want to get to the gadol. They want to get to the rebbe. Somebody was telling me yesterday about how he had an issue and he was trying to get into the Belzer Rebbe and all the different phone calls that he had to make to try to get into the Belzer Rebbe. Imagine if you had the opportunity. Mamish v'chol boi olam yavrun lefanav kivnei marain. No problem. You're going to get right in, a personal one-on-one invitation with whichever gadol, whichever rebbe you want. No questions asked. You're right in. Well, this is not a gadol. This is not a rebbe. You have the opportunity for a one-on-one appointment with the Borei Olam. That's v'chol boi olam yavrun lefanav kivnei marain. So that's an incredible opportunity. Frightening on the one hand, an incredible opportunity on the other hand. So that's Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li Chodesh El. We have the opportunity to become very close to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and we have to take full advantage of that opportunity. Okay, now we go back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. So, Siman Shin Chav Hey, Sif Yud. What have we seen here so far in Sif Yud? In Sif Yud, we're discussing a case where an Eina Yehudi went ahead and he filled up water from a bar. So he took his bucket, he lowered it down into the bar. Now, the interior of the bar is a Rishus HaYachid. So right now, he's filling up a bucket of water inside Rishus HaYachid. When he draws the bucket up and he takes the bucket out from the confines of the well, and now he puts it outside, now, assuming that the outer area, the area around the well, is not an enclosed area, he could be pulling that water from a Rishus HaYachid out to a Rishus HaRabim. That's the first case that the Mechaber deals with in Sif Yud, where the Ein Yehudi is transferring mayim from the inside of the bar or Rishus HaYachid to the outside area, which is a Rishus HaRabim. Now that is Meleches Iser Daraisa. He just performed the Iser Daraisa. It's not also for him, but he performed the Malacha Daraisa of Haitzah. What is the halacha with that water? Is a Yid allowed to make use of that water or not? So the Mechaber said, and this goes very much in line with everything we've learned so far, it depends who the Ein Yehudi did it for. If the Ein Yehudi did it la'atzmai, if he did it for himself, he wanted to give the water to his own animals, well, in that case, that water is mutter. We're not concerned with the fact that you're benefiting from malacha that the Ein Yehudi did, because he did that malacha completely for himself. The caveat that the Mechaber gave was, it has to be a case, in order for it to be mutter, it has to be a case where the Ein Yehudi does not know the Yisrael. If he knows the Yisrael, then we're concerned that even though he says he did it for himself, maybe he brought up extra water because he knows the Yisrael needs water, in which case he did malacha for the Yisrael. But if we're talking about some Ein Yehudi by the well, and you don't know him, and he doesn't know you, and he went ahead and he brought up water for his own animals, and now there's extra water, gesund heit. You could go use that water, you could give it to your animals, no problem. But what if the Ein Yehudi pulled up the water for the Yisrael? What if the Ein Yehudi sees the Yisrael, he knows that the Yisrael can't bring up water out of the well, so he says, don't worry, I'll do it for you. And he brings up water out of the well for the Yisrael. If he does it b'shvil Yisrael, then that mayim is going to be aser for any Yid. Not only is it aser for the Yid that he did it for, it's aser for any Yid. Why? Because he did malacha daraisa. This is not malacha darabanan. He did malacha daraisa, and he did it on behalf of a Yisrael. The benefit of that malacha is aser to any Yisrael. It doesn't matter for who. That's what we learned here so far in Sif Yud. Now we go on to the next case. The next case is going to be a case where the Ein Yehudi also brought up water from the bar, but in this case, it's only going to be malacha derabanan. It's not going to be malacha daraisa. Says the Mechaber on the bottom line, Kuftun Tesam and Aleph. Ve'emile mi bar rishus hayachid lekarmelis. What if the area surrounding the bar is not a real bona fide rishus harabim? It's not a big road. It's not a makom hiluch shishim ribu. It's not a real rishus harabim. It's a public area, but it's not a rishus harabim. It's only a karmelis. It's a rishus derabanan. So now, transferring the water from inside the bar, from the Rishus HaYachid, to the area outside the bar is no longer Malacha Daraisa. Now it's only a Malacha Darabanan. In that case, says the Mechaber, the halacha is different. Ve'mile mi bar Rishus HaYachid lekarmelis, if he transfers the water from a Rishus HaYachid to a karmelis, so then, mutter la'acher shaloi mile b'shviloi. Then, the water is going to be mutter for any Yisrael, except for the one that he did it for. Now, this is very, very much in line with everything that we've learned previously. It's very similar to what we learned in the case of a guy who brings something from outside of the Tchum, right? When an Ein Yehudi does malacha derabanan, like bringing something from outside of the Tchum, or in our case, he does malacha derabanan, he transfers mayim from a Rishus HaYachid to a karmelis. In that case, it's aser for the one that he did it for, but it's mutter for everybody else. So again, that's what the Mechaber said. V'mile mi bar Rishus HaYachid lekarmelis, mutter la'acher shaloi miloi b'shviloi. It becomes mutter for Yisrael that he did not do the malacha for. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Nun Daled lekarmelis, if he transferred the water from a Rishus HaYachid to a karmelis, the einayela malacha derabanan. So now we're talking about malacha derabanan, not malacha daraisa. Mutter li Yisrael acher v'chanal b'sivches. Then it is mutter for any other Yisrael. It's mutter to everyone except the one he did it for, and this is very much in line with what we learned in Sivches when an Ein Yehudi brought something from outside of the Tchum. Now the Ramah is going to bring a couple of very interesting opinions that are more mekel. Hagah, on the bottom of Kuftun Tesam and Aleph, says the Ramah, Hagah, V'yesh bekilin, there are those who are mekel, v'oimrim, and they say, Da'afi muhuva derech rishus harabim l'tzarech Yisrael. There's a makel opinion that says, even if the Ein Yehudi did malacha daraisa, even if he brought the water from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim, and he did it l'tzarech Yisrael, mutter la'adam lishtois mehem. It would be mutter for Yisrael to drink the water. So again, in the first opinion, the Mechaber said, oh, the malacha daraisa was done b'shvil Yisrael. The Ein Yehudi brought up the mayim from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim, malacha daraisa, and he did it b'shvil Yisrael. That water is aser to any Yisrael. A guy did malacha daraisa on behalf of a yid. It's aser to all yidden. This makel opinion says a yid would be allowed to drink the water. He would not be allowed to give the water to his animal to drink, but the yid could drink the water. Why? Explains the Ramah, Hayil ve'efsher leilech sham v'lishtois. Because think about it, says the Ramah. The water is inside the well. Now, when we think of a well, we tend to think of, that very picturesque postcard of the little stone, circle in the middle of the field with the little roof on top, with the crank and the bucket, right? No one's going to say, oh, a person could climb down into the well and take a drink. That's a postcard well. We're not talking about that kind of bar. We're talking about a bar, which is a man-made structure, but it's got a nice big, wide opening. It's got water in there. Says the Ramah, the truth is, if Ruvain the Yisrael happens to be thirsty on Shabbos afternoon, and he's out in an area where it's Rishus HaRabim, and he wants to take a drink, and he knows that the inside of the bar is Rishus HaYachid, so he knows he can't take water from inside the well and bring it out, because that would be the malacha of Haitzah, but he's really thirsty. What this yid could do is he could climb into the bar. He could go into the bar, take a drink of water inside the bar, and then drink, and then go back outside of the bar. So he went into the Rishus HaYachid, he made a shahakal, he took a drink inside the Rishus HaYachid, and then he left his cup there, whatever, and he went back out into the Rishus HaRabim. No problem. So says the Ramah, a person could go ahead and enjoy that water and take a drink without the goy. He doesn't need the Ein Yehudi's malacha. So reasons the Ramah, at least he's quoting this makel opinion, the whole problem over here is that you cannot take the benefit of the malacha that the Ein Yehudi did. But in this case, I didn't need his malacha. His malacha was, he took the water out of the bar and he brought it to me. I don't need your malacha. I had the full ability to go into the bar and take a drink on my own. So if I take the drink from the Ein Yehudi, we don't see that as you're being nene from the Ein Yehudi's malacha, because he didn't need it. That's the rationale, says the Ramah, for this yesh makilim. Mutter la'adam lishtois mehem, a person would be allowed to drink the water that the Ein Yehudi brought out of the bar. Why? Hayil ve'efsher leilech sham v'lishtois. Because I'm not getting benefit from the Ein Yehudi's malacha. I could have climbed into the well and I could have taken a drink. And the Ramah brings this down. He says the Torah quotes it, B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is Katan Nun Hey. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hayil ve'efsher. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, since it's possible for the Yid to go get the water on his own, therefore, if you use the water that the Ein Yehudi transferred from the well to the Rishus HaRabim, we don't see it as you're being nene from his malacha, because you didn't need his malacha. Thank you, Tony, but I didn't need your malacha. I could have gotten the drink myself. Now that I could have done it myself, if I take it from Tony, we don't see it that I'm being nene from Tony's malacha daraisa that he did. It's only aser to use the water for your animal. Because while you could go ahead and climb into the bar and take a drink, your cow cannot climb into the bar to take a drink. So if you use the mayim that Tony transferred from the bar to the Rishus HaRabim for your cow, in that case you're being nene from Tony's malacha. That's aser. But for you to take a drink from the water that Tony transferred from the bar to the Rishus HaRabim, that's not a problem, because in that case we don't see you as benefiting from the goy's malacha. Now, the Mishnah Berurah parses this a little bit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ubebehema nami. The truth is, even by an animal, imhevi mayim minohar. Let's say the guy went and he took water not from the bar, he took water from the river. Now, the river could also sometimes be considered a rishus hayachid. She'ev shelo lishtais misham gufa. In that case, or let's say the nahar was the other case. Let's say the nahar was the rishus harabim, and Tony went and he took water from the nahar and he brought it into a penned-in corral, which is a rishus hayachid, right? In that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, you would be allowed to give it to your animal. Why? Because if it came from a river, well, your cow could drink from the river. He could walk over to the bank, stick his head in, and he could go ahead and he could take a drink. So in that case, you would be allowed to give the water to your animal as well, because again, since your animal could drink that water beheter, we don't look at you being neneh from the guy's malacha if you use the water that he brought be'isr. Or I'll give you another case, says the Mishnah Berurah. Shehevi mibar ha'omeid b'rishus hayachid shahaya efshar lahachnisa sham ulahashkaisa b'lo chil Shabbos. Or maybe there's another case. Let's say the bar is located in a rishus hayachid. So the bar was located in a fenced-in area. And now the Ein Yehudi went ahead. He went into the fenced-in area. He took out water from the bar, and he brought it out to the rishus harabim. So again, he's doing malacha daraisa, but in that case, you could allow your animal to drink from that water, because you could have taken your animal and brought your animal into the fenced-in area that's the rishus hayachid where the bar is, and then you could go draw water out of the bar and give it to your behema. So again, as long as there's a way for you to enjoy the water beheter, so if you could enjoy it beheter and your animal can't enjoy it beheter, then you're allowed to use the water that the guy brought. If your animal has a way to enjoy the water beheter without the malach of the guy, then you could give the water that the guy brought to your animal. That's what's going on here. Because even though the fact is that Tony the Ein Yehudi brought the mayim be'isr, you're not getting hana from the malacha that he did, because you could have had the same hana without Tony's chil Shabbos. And therefore there's no problem, according to this shita, for you to take advantage of his malacha. Avol. In bapam hazeh hevi ha'ein Yehudi mayim lebehemtoi mibar shehu rishus hayachid ha'imid b'rishus harabim. Let's say you have a case where the Ein Yehudi did malacha daraisa. He brought water from a bar that's a rishus hayachid, and he brought it out to rishus harabim. Okay. De'elu ha'mayim I efshar lahashkoisa beheter v'chanal. So you would not have been able to give this water to your animal beheter, because your animal can't get into the well. Okay. Av sheyesham gam nohar shahaya efshar lahashkoisa misham aser. The Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. The rule that the Mishnah Berurah just taught us is, you're not allowed to get hana from the malacha daraisa that the Ein Yehudi did. So, level number one, high level, you have the mechaber's halacha. Tony the Ein Yehudi transferred mayim from the bar to the rishus harabim. You're not allowed to give it to your animal. Yesh bakilim, the Ramah said, you're allowed to go take a drink. Why? Because you could have gone into the bar and you could have taken a drink inside the bar. So you could have enjoyed the mayim beheter. Since you could have enjoyed the mayim beheter, you're allowed to use the mayim that the goy brought be'isr. Same thing for your animal. If there was a way for your animal to enjoy the mayim beheter, so then you could give the water to your animal even though the goy brought it be'isr. Because we don't look at that you're being neneh from the malach of the goy. So now the Chavetz Chaim comes up with an interesting case. What do you do with the following case? The guy brought the water from the bar be'isr. Your animal could not enjoy that water beheter because your animal can't go into the bar. But over there, 20 feet away, there's a lake. And your animal could go to the lake and take a drink from the lake. So could your animal get a drink beheter? Yes, your animal could get a drink beheter. But he could drink the lake water beheter. He can't drink the bar water beheter. But he could get a drink beheter. So now are you allowed to give him the water that the guy brought from the well? The svara to say that you could would be, I'm not really being nene from Tony's malacha. Yeah, it's true. Tony brought mayim be'isser from the well. But I have water in the lake that my animal could go drink beheter. So I'm not really having anah from Tony's malacha. If Tony wouldn't have taken water from the bar, I would give my cow water from the lake. So I have a way to give my cow water beheter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, that doesn't work. Av sheyesham gam nar shaya efshal ashkeisa misham aser. Dal kolponim mayim elu lamaisa, this water that Tony brought from the well, hevi mimakom shei efshal lishtais beheter. You're gonna give your animal this bar water that Tony brought from the bar. There's no way for your animal to drink that water beheter. And since there's no way for your animal to drink that water beheter, even though there is a way for him to drink other water beheter, you cannot give him that water. Because if you give him that water, that's called being nene from the malacha of the Einoi Yehudi. Okay, so that was the first Mekel opinion that the Ramah brought down. Now we're going to see a much more Mekel opinion. Says the Ramah weiter. Second line down, middle of the line, right by the Ois Kat Nun Zayin for the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, a real Mekel opinion. V'yesh matirin, there are those that are matir, af lechatchila, even lechatchila, v'chein nagu heter, and the Ramah says the minig became to be matir this, to be matir what? Loimar, to go do an amira to an Eina Yehudi. Loimar, af lechatchila, le'eina Yehudi, to go do amira la'akum lechatchila, lahavi shechar, to bring beer, oy sha'ar dvarim, or other necessities for the Shabbos Suda, derech karmelis, through a reshus d'Rabbanan, oy beloy erev, or through a chotzer that doesn't have in eruve chatzeres. What's this heter that the Ramah is saying? The Ramah is saying there are those that are matir, mamish lechatchila, to go do amira la'akum on an iser d'Rabbanan, carrying through a karmelis, right? Carrying something in a karmelis, dalan amis in a karmelis is an iser d'Rabbanan. So there are those that are matir amira la'akum. You could tell Tony, go get me beer. Can't do daraisa. Don't go bring it from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid. But if you're dealing with a karmelis, and according to many opinions, our streets nowadays are only a karmelis, not a real Rishus HaRabim. So you could go tell Tony, go bring me beer for the Suda, carry it through the karmelis, bring it from the karmelis into the Rishus HaYachid, all Isurei D'Rabbanan, bringing in the chotzer that doesn't have an Eruve Chatzeros, Isurei D'Rabbanan, go do Haitzah D'Rabbanan in order to bring me beer, in order to bring me some dips, in order to bring me, things that I want for my Shabbos Suda. So Amir La'akum on the D'Rabbanan for the Tzarchei Suda. So v'yesh matirin af lechatchila, v'chein nagu heter loymar af lechatchila le'ena Yehudi lahavi sheichar oy sha'ar dvarim der karmelis oy b'lei erev. And says the Ramah, v'af al pi sheyesh lahachmir b'davar, even though really we should be machmir and we should not do this, mikam okim nevertheless ein limchais biyad hamakilin, we cannot object or protest to those that are mekel l'tzarich Shabbos u'b'shas atchak. If they're doing it either l'tzarich Shabbos, like the beer for the Shabbos Suda, or b'shas atchak, where they're stuck and they need this, then you shouldn't object. The hayesh lahakal ba'amir le'eni Yehuda l'tzarich k'maychin is bar Siman Shin Zayin, because we already saw a precedent in Siman Shin Zayin that on a shvus to shvus, on a double d'Rabbanan, amir la'akum is a d'Rabbanan, and we're talking about a type of haitzah that is only in Issa d'Rabbanan, carrying in a karmelis, transferring from a karmelis to Rishus HaYachid. These are only surei d'Rabbanan. So you're talking about a mira la'akum on an Issa d'Rabbanan. So it's a double d'Rabbanan, it's a shvus to shvus. We already saw in Siman Shin Zayin that a shvus to shvus, you could be mekel, b'makom tzarech gadol, b'makom chayli, l'tzarech mitzvah. So says the Ramah, yeah, there are those that are mekel over here. You want beer for the Suda, you could ask l'chatchila, you could do amira la'akum to an Eina Yehudi and ask him to do haitzah d'Rabbanan, to bring you beer for the Shabbos Suda. The Ramah says, yesh lahachmir, really yesh lahachmer b'davar, but you can't object to somebody who does this. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton nun vav. Okay, I see I skipped a Mishnah Berurah by mistake. I'm going to come back to it later. Let's do Mishnah Berurah Nun Zayin. I skipped Nun Vav. Let's go to Eis Katan Nun Zayin, because this is what we're in the middle of discussing. Says the Chavetz Chaim, V'yesh matirin, ha'achronim nidchaku ma'oid b'tam hadover. The Chavetz Chaim says that the achronim have a very hard time with this Ramah. Ta'ha'af hayesh makilin de masamach. Even the first kula that we learned about in the Ramah, the first kula of the Ramah that we saw today, that okay, the Eini Yehudi brought it derech Rishus Harabim l'tzarich Yisrael. The Yid could go ahead and drink from it because that's not called being nana from the malacha of the goy. That was only if the goy already brought it. Okay, go take a drink. But we were never matir amir la'akom afilu b'karmelis v'choshkein b'Rishus Harabim, and certainly not in a Rishus Harabim. And the Ramah is bringing this from the kolboy. The Magen Avraham says the kolboy never said it. Ladam. He looked at the kolboy, it's not there. The Gra says that this is not a kolboy, it's the opinion of the Ravya. Hamuva bebeis Yosef b'simin shin zayin ayin sham. The Ramah said that you could ask the Eini Yehudi to bring sheichar, beer, or sha'ar devarim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, sha'ar devarim, what, anything under the sun? No, hainu davar shu tzarich Shabbos ksas. It has to be something that's a tzarich Shabbos. It's got no test. Derech Carmelis. You're asking him to do this at the Rabbanon. That you could be makel even on our Rishus Harabims, because according to most, our Rishus Harabims are really not Rishus Harabims, they're really a Carmelis. Even though definitely the strong reason to be makmer on this. The mitam shvus de shvus ein material lechatchila rak b'tzarich gadol oile dvar mitzvah gemura. The Ramah is saying over here that you could do this amir la'akum to bring something through a Carmelis. You could ask the Eini Yehudi to do a tzad rabbanon for what? For beer for the Shabbos Suda. Oy shar devarim, or maybe some pickle dip. You know, something else for the Shabbos Suda. Says the Chavetz Chaim, yes, it's true. In Shin Zayin, we saw a precedent to be matir amir la'akum on an issa d'Rabbanan because the shvus. But when? B'makom tzarich gadol, or l'tzarich mitzvah, which in the words of the Chavetz Chaim means rak b'tzarich gadol, or l'dvar mitzvah gemura. Pickle dip is not a mitzvah gemura. Beer is not a mitzvah gemura. You could drink something else by the Suda. You don't have to have beer. But it's interesting what the Mishnah Berurah is about to say now. Kigoin, what's called a mitzvah gemura or a tzarich gadol? Tzarich mashka l'kiddush. You don't have wine for kiddush. You don't have grape juice for kiddush. Okay, so you need grape juice, you need wine for kiddush, you need chamar medina for kiddush. Okay, that's a tzarich gadol. That's a mitzvah gemura. Yes, for that you could do amir la'akum on an issa d'Rabbanan. For that you could ask the guy to do a tzad d'Rabbanan and bring something from a Carmelis to Rishus HaYachid. What I find fascinating is the next phrase of the Mishnah Berurah. Oy lahavi atav shel hacham, or to bring the hot dish, aka the cholent, shehuchan l'su'udah Shabbos, that was prepared for the Shabbos Suda. See what the Mishnah Berurah says? Cholent, chamin, is like kiddush. Would you have thought that the Mishnah Berurah would equate wine for kiddush and cholent? No, so you won't have cholent to Shabbos. No, cholent is mitzvah gemura. Chamin, by the Shabbos Suda, says the Chavetz Chaim, is mitzvah gemura. You could do amir la'akum on hitzad rabbanon for the cholent, not just for the wine for kiddush, for the cholent also. Okay. Oiskat and Samach Aleph, ein limchais. The Ramah said if you see somebody being samach on this shita, on this kolboy that's mekel, you should not object. Says the Mishnah Berurah, a couple of caveats. Val kol panim, lo yitain mois le'eni Yehudi al zeh. You have to make sure you can't go ahead and pay the Eini Yehudi who's doing this. V'gam lo yitain lo yakli liyadai. Also, if you're sending him to go get you beer, so you're sitting by your dining room table inside your Rishus HaYachid, and you're asking the Eini Yehudi to get you a quart of beer. So you give him a quart pitcher, and you say, do me a favor, go and go get me beer. So now, you just made an akira in Rishos HaYachid by handing him the pitcher. Now he goes out and he goes through the Carmelis, he might even go through a Rishos HaRabim, and he's going to put it down somewhere. He might go ahead and put it down in Rishos HaRabim. He may certainly put it down in a Carmelis. In that case, you made an akira with the understanding that the guy was going to make the hanacha. You did part of the Isser Haitzah, that itself is an Isser D'Rabbanan. So says the Chavetz Chaim, don't pick up the pitcher and give it to him. Let him take the pitcher by himself. Also, when he comes back, don't take the pitcher from him. Let him put the pitcher down on the table. Because if you accept the pitcher from him, by accepting the pitcher from him, you're doing the back end of the malacha of Haitzah. You're doing the hanacha. He did an akira. You don't know where he did the akira. He might have done the akira in a Carmelis. He might have done the akira in a Rishos HaRabim. Now you're doing the hanacha inside Rishos HaYachid. You might be doing the closing end of the malacha of Haitzah. Can't do that. This is D'Rabbanan. So let him take the pitcher by himself on the way out. Let him put the pitcher down by himself on the way in. Kedei shalayasa Yisrael ha'akira v'ha'anocha. Ice cut and samich beis. The Ramah said you shouldn't be moicha, you shouldn't be object, so long as this is being done litzayrich Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kasvar achrayim neachrayim right. The b'kamakim nevertheless ain't lahakel ela b'sheichar v'kiyoytza b'yad dvar matzricha b'Shabbos she'yef sheliyos beladam ela b'doichik tzas. If you're going to rely on this heter of the Ramah, it's only appropriate to rely on this heter for something that's a real tzayrich for the Shabbos Suda. In those days, they didn't have Pepsi. They drank water. Water is not so makavadik. They didn't drink so much water, by the way, because water wasn't considered safe to drink. You never knew where that water was coming from. That water is coming from an above-ground water source, and remember that they didn't have sanitary sewers, so water was not considered a safe drink. Beer was considered a safe drink because even though you used the water to produce the beer, but through the fermentation, and then because of the alcohol content, that would not purify, it would disinfect the water. So water was really not a drink of choice. So what are you going to drink by the Suda? Wine was expensive. So you drank beer. That's what you drank by the Suda. Says the Chavetz Chaim, rely on the Ramah's heter to go get you beer for the Suda. You need something to drink by the Suda. And that's something it would be a real doichik. It would really cramp your Shabbos Suda if you didn't have the beer. But something that's not such a requirement. So you won't have dessert. You won't have some apples for dessert. The kiyotza bazeh, or something similar to that, ain't lahakel. For the pickle dip, that's not considered so important that you should go rely on this heter of the Ramaz. Even if you say, what do you mean? My sweet onion dip, that's an ikr part of my kavod Shabbos. Says the Chavetz Chaim, not so fast. Certainly, says the Chavetz Chaim, the meaning that some people had that they would use an Eini Yehudi to go send gifts to the Chassan and Kala on Shabbos, not appropriate. In the words of the Ramah said, you shouldn't object to people that are mekel l'tzayrich Shabbos u'b'shas hatchak. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what does that mean? It's two separate cases. U'b'shas hatchak, hainu oy b'shas hatchak, or it's a real shas hatchak. Now I realized that I skipped Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Nun Vav. So let's go back to Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Nun Vav. Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Nun Vav refers back to the first kula that the Ramah brought down today. What was that kula? That kula was a shita that says, if the Eini Yehudi went ahead and he did Haitzah Daraisa, and he did it B'Shvil Yisrael. So he went ahead and he drew water from the Rishos HaYachid well, and he transferred the water to Rishos HaRabim, bona fide Malacha Daraisa, and he did it for Ruvain. He did it for the Yid. Said the Ramah, there are those that mekel, there are those that are mekel, and say Ruvain could go ahead and drink the water. He can't give it to his animal, but he could drink the water. Why? Because since Ruvain theoretically could go down into the well and take a drink by himself, while he's in the confines of the bar in the Rishos HaYachid, by taking the water that Tony brought out of the well, we don't see that Ruvain is really being nene from Tony's malacha. Now let's take a look at Mishnah Berurah Katan Nun Vav. Leilech Sham. Now, V'yemeina Yisrael Yachal Leilech Sham. It's very nice to say that the Yid could theoretically go into the bar and get the water. Let's say he can't. Why can't he? Well, one case the Mishnah Berurah says is maybe where the well is a bad neighborhood. So it's very nice to say, theoretically he could go to the bar. No, he's not going to go to the bar. He knows that where the bar is, it's surrounded by MS-13 gangbangers. So he's not going to go there. So it's theoretically, but he's not going to. Or maybe he's an older gentleman who can't do it. It's very nice. Theoretically, he can do it. No, he can't do it. So if you can't do it, you can't do it. Also, Gamlu Deyazu. So then this kula of the Ramaz would not be germane. It's only if it's for real. If it's for real that you could have gotten the water without the malach of the goy, then yes, you could have this kula. But if it's not for real, it's not for real. Upashit, and it's obvious, says the Mishnah Berurah, when we're talking here about drinking the water, giving the water to your animals to drink, the same halachas would apply to doing anything else with the water. Let's say you want water to wash the dishes. So you can't use this argument of the Ramah in the first kula and say, I could use the water that Tony brought from the well doing malacha daraisa because theoretically I could go into the well and wash the dishes in the well? You're not going to wash the dishes in the well. So then this heter is not for real. Dina kibehemtoi v'asa gamlu deyazu. Well, Indian Dina alach lamaisa says the Mishnah Berurah ha'ikr kidei rishayna du das kol rishaynim. The Iker Halacha follows the first opinion of the Mechaber that if the Eini Yehudi did Malacha Daraisa and he did it on behalf of Yisrael, you cannot use that water and you can't employ any of these kulis. V'chein mashma me'agrova te'sev Shabbos. V'rak l'tzarech gadol oy l'tzarech Shabbos yesh lishbach hazel hakel u'v'moitzoi Shabbos yesh lahata b'yad b'chol gavni. Okay, now let's go to Sif Yod Aleph, 3 lines off the bottom. Kufta Testament Beis says the Mechaber. Likate Eini Yehudi asavim litzarich behemtoi. So the truth is, here we go again. I mean, this is just another case of an Eini Yehudi doing malacha daraisa. In this case, he's doing the malacha of toilish. He's going ahead and he's uprooting grass. And why did he do it? Well, in the words of the Mechaber, he did it for his own animal. Likate Eini Yehudi asavim litzarich behemtoi. He went and he collected. He uprooted grass for his animal. Okay, so he did malacha deraisa for his own purposes. Okay, so what should the halacha be? The halacha should be, no problem. Any Yisrael could go ahead and get the benefit of that malacha. You want to go ahead and feed the leftover grass to your behema? No problem. Yeah, Tony did malacha, but he did it for himself. There's no problem benefiting from that malacha. Likate Eini Yehudi asavim l'tzarich behemtoi im einoi makiroi. If Tony doesn't know you, so then, Ma'ichalach Rav Yisrael, then you could take the leftovers and feed it to your animal. If Tony doesn't know you. Now, if Tony knows you, it's a problem, because then you have to be afraid that he did it for you. And if he did it for you, that grass is going to be offered to everybody, because he did Malach Daraisa B'Shvil Yisrael. So then that Malach is going to be offered to any Yid. Now, the Mechaber mentions another point here, and that is, if we're talking about an Eini Yehudi uprooting grass on Shabbos, you've got another problem, and that is muktzah. Since the grass was connected to the ground, Ben Hashmashas Friday evening, when Shabbos came in, that grass was muktzah during Ben Hashmashas. Migidis gatzoi leben Hashmashas is gatzoi lekula yuma. So, could you go ahead and actually pick up the grass and feed it to your animal? No, you can't, because you can't be metaltal the muktzah. So yes, you could use the grass. But how? Explains the Mechaber, Michael Acharav Yisrael, you could use the leftovers for your animal. How? Sha'oimid befaneha, you have to stand in front of your animal. Be'inyin shaloitucha lintoi seladerech sham, you're going to block your animal so that you're going to guide your animal to walk to where that grass is. And then you could let the animal eat. The ilu lahamidam alei and osir. Not only are you not allowed to pick up the grass and feed it to your animal, you're not allowed to bring your animal to that grass and let it stand there and graze. You could block the animal so that you convince the animal and guide the animal to go there. And when it gets there, you could let it eat. But you can't bring the animal there to the delicious grass. Why? Because then we're afraid you might pick up the grass and feed it to your animal, and that would be usher because because that grass is usher. Avol im makiroi, but if you know the guy, and the guy knows you, then usher. Then this is usher. Again, why? Because if the guy knows you, then we're afraid that he picked extra grass for you, he did malacha daraisa b'shvil Yisrael, and then that grass is usher for everybody. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Samach Dalid, Litzarich Behemtoi. The case that we're dealing with over here is that Tony uprooted the grass for his own animal. Now, the Mishnah Berurah does some of the math for us over here. The Mishnah Berurah is going to say, according to the Makel opinion that we saw in the Ramah, right? The first Makel opinion that we saw in the Ramah today by the Mayim, right? We saw that if you're not really being neneh from the malacha of the guy, then even if it was done b'shvil Yisrael, the Makel opinion said you could get the benefit of that malacha, right? The guy brought the water, he did hoitzah daraisa, but you could go down into the bar and you could take a drink in the bar, you could take the water that Tony brought out of the well. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that same kula would apply here in Sif Yod Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah spells it out for us. Even if Tony picked the grass for the Yisrael's animal, mutter, it would be mutter. Why? Does your cow need Tony to uproot the grass in order for your cow to eat it? No, your cow can eat grass that's attached to the ground. So, according to that Makel opinion in the Ramah, this halach of the Mechaber wouldn't be true. He would disagree with this. Because, okay, Tony uprooted it. I didn't need Tony to uproot it. When my cow eats it, I'm not benefiting from the fact that Tony uprooted it. My cow would have eaten it if it was attached to the ground too. So, unless you'll tell me that Tony went to the other side of the river, he uprooted grass over there, and now he brought it to this side of the river. So your cow couldn't have eaten it without Tony uprooting it, because in order to bring it here, he had to uproot it. And your cow couldn't eat it over there. So now you're talking benefiting. Or it's just a little bit of grass that somehow the cow wouldn't have eaten if it was b'mechuber. But the truth is, says the Chavetz Chaim, most poskim do not make this distinction, and they don't apply the kula of the mechaber to this case. The ones who are those poskim, they say that the Ramah's kula was only for the purposes of a person drinking. It wouldn't be for the purposes of an animal eating. If we're dealing with a shasat chak where a Yisrael Pachut doesn't have grass to feed his animals, in that case, writes then you could apply the kula of the Rabbah. To ask the Ein Yehudi to feed the grass to your animal, even if he went ahead and picked it L'tzarech Yisrael, you could rely on the kula and you could do this. So too, in the case where the Ein Yehudi did malacha daraisa, he took water from the nar and he brought it out to the Rishus Harabim. Since your animal could have gone to the nar and he could have drank from the nahar, so you could rely on the Ramah's kula. If ve'ein lo ma'im acher l'itein la, af agav shemilon ein Yehudi b'shvil Yisrael mutter. Aval loimer la'ein Yehudi lalaket hasav b'chol inyan aser. But to ask an ein Yehudi to go ahead and pick grass b'chol inyan aser dehem malacha daraisa. So yes, you could rely on the kula of the Ramah. If you don't have anything else to give your animal, you could rely on the kula of the Ramah, and you could ask the Ein Yehudi to do the Iser D'Rabbanan, where your animal could have gotten what he needed without the guy's malacha. But you can never ask the guy to do a malacha daraisa like picking grass. And certainly also to ask an Ein Yehudi to draw mayim out of the well, which is a Rishus HaYachid, and to deposit it in the Rishus Harabim is also because that would be Amir La'akam on a daraisa. Achim Saviv Habar Hu Carmelis. But if the area surrounding the bar is not a Rishus Harabim, it's only a Carmelis, a Rishus D'Rabbanan, so he's only doing an Issa D'Rabbanan. Matir Sham B'chlal Samach Beis Al Yidei Ein Yehudi. The Chayodam is matir this through the agency of an Ein Yehudi, Mishum Tzar B'Alechayim. V'davka Pam Echad B'Yoyim V'Lo Yoyser, but only to feed your animal once during the day, not more. V'Al Yidei Yisrael L'Olam Aser, and certainly for Yisrael to do it on his own is 100% Aser. It's an Issa D'Oraisa. We're not going to be matir an Issa D'Oraisa with Tzar B'Alechayim. Machal Acharov Yisrael. Yisrael could give the leftover grass that the Ein Yehudi picked for himself. He could give it to his animal. The Muktzah Mutter Bahana. He can't give it to his animal. He can allow his animal to eat it, because Muktzah is also B'tilpel. It's not also Bahana. You're allowed to get Hana. The fact that your animal is eating Muktzah grass, that's not a problem. The only heter you have over here is if the guy doesn't know you. But if the guy knows you, then it's a problem, because then we're afraid he's going to pick grass for you. From the fact that the Mechaber writes this in a very general sense, question is, what if the guy knows you? Now, what's the problem if the guy knows you? The problem is that if the guy knows you, you have to be chayshish that maybe he picked grass for you. In other words, he says, nah, I'm doing it for myself. But maybe he's picking extra because he knows you need. Now, the question is that concern mitigated if you don't use the grass in front of him? If you don't use the grass in front of him, then there's no reason to say that he picked it for you. So, the afib shaloi b'fnei Yisrael aser in makiroi, it's still aser if the guy knows you. V'chein pasku kama achronim. V'al kol panim, nevertheless, in order for it to be aser, it has to be that at least the guy knows that you need the grass. If the guy knows you, if Tony knows you, but he has no idea that you need the grass, then we don't have to be chayshish that he went there and he picked grass for you. You never had a cow. He doesn't know that you bought a cow yesterday. So what? You're going to be chayshish that he picked grass for your cow? He doesn't know that you have a cow. If he knows that you need it, then there's room to be concerned maybe he was marbe for you. But if he has no clue that you need it, why should we be chayshish that he was marbe for you? There are those that are machmir sheservin dafilu klar also Ein Yehudi, even if the Ein Yehudi already picked the grass. And when he picked it, he had no idea that the Yisrael needed it. Aser im makirai, it's still aser if the guy knows you. Why? Even though it's true that there's no concern that he was marbe for you, but there's another concern. Because from the fact that ultimately you're going to get hana from the guy's malacha, when Tony finds out later that you went ahead and you had hana from the grass that he picked, so the next week he'll pick grass for you. If there's a real tzarech, you could be makel. We're going to stop over here. And, well, I don't want to stop over here because then I'm going to have to recap. So let's go weiter. Ois Katan Samach Zayin, the Mechaber said, in Makiroi, if the guy knows you, Aser. Now, Aser, how long is it Aser for? Is it Aser on Motzei Shabbos? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Hainu Raka no Erev, ve'ein sarch lahamtin b'chidei sheyasu. Over here, there's no need to wait for Kedei sheyasu. Ois Katan Samach Mutter. No, Samach we didn't do yet. Okay, we're going to stop over here, and we will continue next time with the words V'chein B'chol Davar. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. Discuss of Limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Shem should send Yeshua Sefuas Panas and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Kedol Tzedek. B'mher v'yameinu Amen. Be well.